because it is guaranteed to be a lower item level than anything else. Now, crit bonus and crit chance are both like fairly low weight, so I won't actually make you guys sit through this. However, all you have to do from here, guys, whatever you end up rolling first, right? So this can either roll crit chance or crit bonus tier 1, right? And as soon as it hits one of those, then all you have to do, crit chance or crit bonus, right? Let's say we get the crit bonus. Then all you're going to do is just use an Omen of the Light, right? And an annul, and that'll remove the life regen, right? Right? So now your amulet would look like this, and then you just desecrate the final one. So if you're missing the crit chance, or if you get crit chance first, obviously, you know, you do the crit bonus. Just imagine that's tier 1 again, just for the sake of speed here. And then with respect to the prefixes, if you want to just do global defenses, you can, because global defenses, the only thing, because it has to remove a mod, add a mod, it obviously has to only remove the prefix here, since it can't have a bonus one, so that's guaranteed to get that. Or you could just use a Sinestral Erasure, and just do that until you get whatever tier 1 modifier you want. Then your amulet will be, obviously you can then divine it. If you want to then make this, you should catalyze it as well. You can also use like a Sinestral Annul, and then you can put the catalyst, like let's say you wanted 50% ES, you could use a Sinestral Annul because it's pretty much the same price as a Sinestral Erasure. Get a Perfect Exalt because that's typically cheaper than a Perfect Chaos. And you can also use the Omen of Catalyzing to make it 20% defense quality, which will give you a 20% weight instead of being a 1,000 weight on ES. For example, which is probably the most common thing that people would go for. It'll be 1,200 weight. But again, the remaining prefixes here with respect to the base defenses are all 1,000 weights. So it's quite easy to hit that. I can show you this actually illustratively just to nail that point home on how simple it is typically to get these. So there you go, 3. Point taken. All right, so then you catalyze whatever you want. If you want to then sanctify this using locks to get +3 to +4, it's 4 out of 41, so 10.25 locks on average, so somewhere between 10 and 11. Yeah, and so that's how you go ahead and do that. Now, for the Tenebrous amulets, it's very, very similar. Jewelry, amulet, Tenebrous amulet, again, unless for evasion percentage is item level 75 on the prefix. But in the case of a Tenebrous amulet, in the case of most people's cases, you're probably going to want to have ES percent there, or maybe global defenses if you're playing some kind of hybrid. Now, with the Tenebrous amulet, rather than fracturing spirit, what we're going to fracture on this one is T1 crit chance. Okay, so once you get the T1 crit chance, divine it, again, make it 3 mods, same start, chaos it, so you get the crit, divine it, fracture it, 1 and 3. Then you're going to, again, reduce it to 1 mod. This is just for the sake of speed here. We're then going to get our +3. And again, it can be any +3 here. The item level is the important part. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to, again, block the regen with, and again, just imagine this is a desecrated modifier, right? And then we are going to roll just throw an Exalt on there, and we can then start using the perfect essence. That's item level 75 mod, so we can block with that. And look at that, we hit the T1 attributes right away. Nice, this one's going to go a lot quicker, right? So now we have, on this one currently, there are 4 suffixes, but the Tenebrous amulet can have 5 suffixes and only 1 prefix. And so what we're going to do from here, again, we just go ahead and throw that on, and we go for the crit bonus. Because we have the crit chance fractured, right? Now we can just get crit bonus guaranteed here. Because the +3 is item level 75, the regen is item level 75, the attributes is item level 75, and we have the crit chance fractured. That means that we are guaranteed to be able to whittle into crit bonus here, right? So eventually, again, I'll just save us the time. Eventually, you will get that, and then you will have it with, again, the 4 prefixes, T1 crit, all attributes, +3. And because this is a desecrated mod, all you're going to do at that point then, obviously, is remove the desecrated mod. And this is what's cool about the Tenebrous amulets. You now have 2 options crafting-wise here. You can either do something like, for example, take a perfect essence of the infinite along with a sinestral crystallization. And sorry, let me move my face to the other side so it stops getting in the way here. Sorry if my face has been blocking this at any point. I'm just trying to do this quickly. Perfect essence of the infinite and a sinestral crystallization, right? And that'll take the spell damage here, and it'll make it a percentage attribute. So if you have any need for a percentage strength, dex, or int, you can do that. And also, because this is the item level 72 modifier, that means it'll be the lowest item level modifier. So even if this rolls the wrong percentage attribute, that's okay, because you can then just use a whittle. In this case, you're going to want to take a normal chaos, not a perfect, because we want to roll this into a prefix. So there we go. Now it rolls into a prefix, and then you can just rinse and repeat that same step. Now, another thing you can do, if, for example, you got +3 to spell skills here, and you want cast speed, you can just go for the cast speed if you'd like. However, the downside to that is that you could organically roll the life regen, or you could also roll strength, dex, or int flat. The life regen would be a higher item level than the crit bonus, and the flat mods, the flat attributes would be a higher item level than, the equal item level to the crit bonus. So if you're going for like cast speed, for example, you could just use the final mod to desecrate it, right? You could desecrate like all res here, cast speed, percentage quality to skills, right? A lot of good options. And then if you do end up using your desecrated mod for your final suffix, obviously in that case, you can just use a sinestral erasure or global defenses to roll your prefix into whatever you want. Typically that's going to be 50 spirit, but obviously build dependent. However, if you do get your final suffix naturally, so when I was crafting these, it was for a build that had like an element of strength stacking into it, right? And so sinestral crystallization, perfect essence of the infinite. There we go. So this is how I had mine, right? Now, what's really dope if you do this, if you get them naturally, is that your prefix, right? You can now just use a preserved collarbone, ID it, and if you desecrate something that is wrong, right? Like the wrong mod, you can then just take global defenses to remove the desecration, and you can just infinitely spam those, because you don't have to use the Omen of the Light, you don't have to use the expensive essence, right? So you basically get that prefix for free, right? Because, the global defense is there, and so, sorry, I forgot to mention, when you're using the preserved collarbone, you have to pair that with, the sinestral crystallization, sinestral necromancy. There we go. Because that'll force the desecrated mod to go to a prefix, so it'll replace the global defenses, like so, right? You take a look, picks the wrong one, then the global defenses, again, because it has to remove and add a mod, right? The only mod that it can possibly remove is the spell damage, because it can't remove a suffix, right? Because then you'd have two prefixes, which is not possible. So the only mod it can possibly remove is the prefix, right? And now that you have, so that saves you like 35 divs per Omen of Light, and then you just go back and repeat that infinitely, and you can get, spirit or whatever. So yeah, that's how you determine if you do that, boys. You can do it again for Tenebrous amulets or for Gloam amulets. The major item level you're looking for is 75. Here's one actually I have right here. You can see 50 spirit, 38 crit, +4 proj, attributes, strength, crit bonus. Here's another one I sold for a couple mirrors. Tenebrous amulet right here. Spirit, crit, proj, attributes, crit bonus, strength. Here's a 5 mirror Gloam amulet, same thing.
I cannot do this yet.
Oh, there's another one. 5 mirror Gloam amulet. So proof of concept there, and that's how you go about doing that, boys. All right, thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, want to see more of this, or if you like these shorter videos, let me know in the comments. Subscribe to the channel, do all that YouTube stuff, hype the video, whatever. Yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Cheers, fellas. One. Hey, what's going on, guys? Belton here. Quick little crafting video today, or I should say the final stages of a craft. Can maybe do a follow-up on how to make the base amulet itself, but figured you guys might enjoy watching this final step here. We are going to be sanctifying, or attempting to sanctify rather, this Tenebrous amulet that I have here. which is 50 spirit. All of the mods on here being perfectly divined as they are. Not that that matters for sanctification, but we've got the double tier 1 crit, plus 3 to projectile skills, the 10% strength, and the 22 to all attributes, all of which are at their max value. And then we've catalyzed the attributes and attributes which impacts attributes and strength percent. And then we anointed damage if you've consumed a frenzy charge recently, skill speed if you've consumed a frenzy charge recently, and plus 10 strength. Since we are playing lightning spear, obviously every time we attack, given our capacity for charge generation, we will always have frenzy charges, and every attack will thus consume one, meaning that that is a permanent uptime, as well as having the strength to boot, which obviously synergizes nicely with everything as well. The location of the node in particular too is something to consider here with the anointment. Normally, obviously, I wouldn't be this contemplative of a anointment since you can change them, but obviously if you sanctify it, that ceases to be the option, so it does require a significant amount of forethought. The Frenzied Bear, unless I traveled over here, traveled up here, took this keystone, and then jumped all the way there, is really not something that realistically I would ever have any capacity to reach on the tree. The other thing I was considering perhaps was Tainted Strike. Most of the other strong notables are within range of regular access, Mystical Rage, or perhaps either Vulgar Methods or Barbaric Strength, although
random chance must dictate you win
mana difficulties, which can exist. Another option too, perhaps might be Battle Trance. I mean, there's lots of good options, frankly. I do think that this is the one that I think is best suited for my needs, though, for the build I'm playing, and hoping to, obviously use this for myself, so we'll be a little bit selfish in my considerations there. And the primary thing that we're looking to hit here,
gives little warning.
what I assume is probably obvious to most people, is to get that +3 to +4. Unlike how Adorned works with like jewels, Sanctification does round up on fractions. So in order to get the lowest roll that you need to get like 3 to 4 would be 3.5. And the first thing that happens with the Sanctification, in case you're unfamiliar, is that it will divine all of the modifiers, like in the similar fashion to how a Vault Orb works on unique items when they have when it chooses the outcome where it scales the integers. So the first thing it does again is divine within its current range, and then once it lands on a number there, it will then independently for each affix on that item, then choose a multiplier between times 0.8 and times 1.2. So 20% increase on the high end and a 20% decrease on the low end. And again, each individual modifier has that done, both the divining and the multiplying element, done independently for each mod. It's also worth noting, because this is a very common mistake I see with people crafting amulets.
You've done well.
You should never fracture a +3, because the long-term value on these is typically going to come from the, at the very least, the prospectus or the possibility of that +3 being changed into a +4. If you fracture a modifier, that mod cannot be changed through Sanctification. In this case here, I've fractured crit for a few reasons, but a big one of those being that crit chance is hard capped, right? And especially because Garukans and Bifurcation are so popular, especially with spear builds, which have abundant access to crit bonus scaling, which then gets doubled with Bifurcation because of the double crit bonus suffixes available on Time Lost and regular jewels that is unique to spears. This is pretty much mandatory skill unless every spear build. However, Garukans also hard caps your crit at 50% instead of 100%, and naturally I'm also, since I'm playing an Oracle, we also have inevitable criticals on top of that. But you still obviously want to get to that 50% so that the downside of the inevitable critical is mitigated as much as possible. However, obviously, when you have a 13% base crit chance plus charge regulation, you don't need an abundance of crit chance. And so
Will you wash clean
that is
the
singular
mortality
modifier
seeks
there,
you in
whereby
kind?
there is obviously a maximum marginal utility provided by scaling it any further. You know, whereas every other modifier here can scale infinitely, theoretically. And so that's again, there's actually a strategic reason crafting-wise why this is structured. We're going to do a separate video on how to deterministically craft +3 double crit amulets on whatever skill gem you want. If you guys are actually interested in that, let me know in the comments below. I can do a quick video on that, and it's changed from the past, but it is 100% deterministic, no chance for failure, and so I can put that together if you guys want. But yeah, I think that's all of the baseline information that you guys would possibly need here. Since the primary aim, I guess, is to get the +3 to +4, and we need at least 3.5 in order for that to round up to 4. That means that we need, when it does the multiplier, obviously the +3 doesn't have a range, so we don't have to worry about the dividing part. But it does need to get a 17, 18, 19, or 20, which means that 4 out of a possible 41 options, assuming that times 0 is also a multiplier. If it's not, then it's 4 out of 40, which is obviously a direct 1 in 10 or 1 in 10.25 if 0 is a possible outcome on a sanctification. Yeah, so as you can see here, we've got 16 Hinokora's locks lined up, which is about 2.3 mirrors or so worth of locks, and hopefully we don't have to use all of them, but we're going to just be checking here to see if that projectile skills goes to +4. Now, because that does take 10/11 locks on average, that's, you know, a mirror and a half plus, which is approximately the same cost it takes to craft this on average, just because, you know, crafting materials are so expensive, even though it's deterministic. You know, when you're paying 40 divs per Witling and like 30 divs for an Omen of Light, you know, it still adds up very quick. But luckily, you know, that inflation is felt game-wide right now, and I'm certainly getting quite a few sales as a result of that. So I've been able to outpace any capital requirements with my earnings or my earnings day to day. So not too concerned in that specific scenario. However, just from an EV perspective, I do think that we're more or less kind of not forced, but we're definitely, like, when +4 presents itself eventually, we're going to just have to, quote unquote, settle theoretically with whatever scaling happens to the other modifiers, because that is so much more disproportionately impactful than anything else on here individually. The second biggest scaler, though, in terms of the only real thing that I have trepidation about, is the percentage strength. Since that can go from 7 to 10%, and since we have it anointed, that means that the maximum would be 14%, and the minimum would be 7%, then getting a times 0.8 multiple, which would put it to 6%. So the difference between 6% strength and 14% strength is obviously substantial. That would be somewhere around, 40-ish, 45 strength, which, would be 55% damage and 22-23% energy shield on this build, assuming that I'm wearing Iron Grasp. But there's some worry there to kind of provide a counterweight to that, and also to make the maximum use of each individual lock. You can see here I also have a couple other currency items that we're going to hover over each, what are they called? Not reveal, but foresee, foreseeable, whatever. Each lock, right? Locks are pretty expensive. I paid about 615 divs per here. So we're also going to check the Witling, the Dextral Erasure, the Chaos Orb, the Greater Chaos Orb, and the Perfect Chaos Orb, and all of the combinations of each one of these 3 Chaos Orbs with the Dextral Erasure, with the Whittle, and with the Whittle and Dextral Erasure combined, as well as by themselves. And we'll also check a Vol Orb and a Vol Orb with an Omen of Light. And then if we do not end up, obviously it's, what would we just sell? 1,250 divs, all right. Yeah, obviously, in all likelihood, we're not going to get this on the very first divine. And so, in order to break the lock, we will then just throw a divine orb at it. Obviously, we'll untick the sanctification so that it doesn't sanctify it. But the divine orb will remove the previous lock. And because the first step of sanctifying in its process is to redivine the item, since we have like the specific goal of getting the +4, we don't have to worry about the fact that it will no longer be perfectly divine, since that will have no bearing on the sanctification itself.
Let's have a look at the layout.
It could theoretically, if we got like a +1 to skill gems corruption hover. Is there an argument for that to be made?
Let's go.
I suppose +1 to all skill gems. Especially because you can get 2 corruption implicits, but you'd have to do a 50-50 to destroy the entire item if you got that. Like, maybe +1 max res and +1 to all skill gems, because all skill gems would apply to, like, spirit gems and stuff as well. Obviously, projectile skills is just, in our case, applying to lightning spear. You know, we would miss out, theoretically, on a potential, 5% crit bonus, 2% strength, 5 to all attributes, and like 10 spirit. But, I mean, that's not really that substantial. So yeah, I guess that's an out as well. But obviously that would pretty much have to happen on the first one, since, likelihood the divine orb that we'll use to break the lock this time is unlikely to give us a perfect divine. Divining this just to get perfect like this is a 1 in 5 times 4, so 20 times 2, 40. Times 4, 160. So it's 160 divs on average to get it perfectly divine like this.
I've got some wealth for you.
Around 2 mirrors or so just to get it to this state. So, anyways, that's all the requisite information. Wish me luck. All right, the first one here we got. Wow, that's the max roll on the crit bonus. Pretty much the max roll down on the attributes. We went up on spirit. Obviously the crit chance can't change. And the attributes went down. Obviously not good enough, but not a bad one to start off with. Vault orb does nothing. That adds 13 int. I will check the regular chaos. DS percent. Mana, armor, cold res, lightning res, dexterity, strength, we could just do like the whittling too, but that's always going to re-roll the spirit, so there's not a prefix that I would prefer over spirit. So after this one, since that has no possible scenario whereby we would keep it, we will just move on from there. Okay, so we'll break that lock.
Hopefully there'll be interest.
Okay, lock number 2. Wow, spirit went. Whoa, that is a bad sanctification. Man, can you imagine that this had like +4 on it and it rolled like this? That'd be devastating. That's like the worst possible crit bonus. Terrible strength percent. Only the attributes went up, and it like the worst possible spirit roll too. God damn, that's ugly. Mana regen. Mana regen. Int. Ooh, all res. Oh yeah, that was another thing I forgot to mention as well. Ooh, cast speed. Oh, wait, did it just happen? Oh no, fuck.
Hero.
One of the reasons why I grabbed these as a carve-out is, for myself, the strength percentage is definitely better. But for like a broadly marketable item, especially when it comes to the odds, as I mentioned, it's like 1 in 10 to get the +4. And so the likelihood of getting that +4 as well with well-rolled strength percentage, going above its max normal capacity at the very least, is very small, right? But a lot of that has to do with the fact that the strength percentage is a 1 in 4 divine, and it's also very niche, right? Like the strength percent is great for my build, but that's definitely not reflective of the overall market. And so one of the things that I thought would be interesting to check here each time would be, since that strength percentage is item level 72, the crit bonus is 74, attributes and proj are 75, and then obviously the crit chance is fractured. That means that the strength percentage is the lowest item level suffix. And so the Whittling and Dextral Erasure combo, along with each one of the various exceptional Chaos Orbs and the regular base Chaos Orb, will always reroll the strength percent. And so if we were to get All Res, for example, All Res is just 15 to 16, right? So it wouldn't really matter what it divined on that end. And All Res is also broadly, like every build in the game needs All Res, where you source it. Typically, amulets are not the most effective place to do so. But for a lot of builds, obviously, that aren't scaling strength percentage or strength in any kind of meaningful way, outside of attribute and gear skill requirements, that would probably be preferable, and it would also greatly increase the likelihood of
do not get ahead of yourself.
Hitting like a all positive or all improved amulet, and just in terms of your potential market for that item, it would be substantially larger market, not necessarily a higher value item, especially if that strength percent goes to 12 or above. 12 is the normal maximum, so 13 or 14, let's say, because that happening in conjunction with the +4 is like that's like a 1 in like 100 or something like that. Wait, what was I just hovering?
Ruin arrives
sworn I was just
suddenly.
hovering something. Was it these two? Cast speed. Life regen.
No
Anyways, what made me
will be
think of that
enough.
was that it must have just been the Dextral Erasure. Yes, it was just the Dextral Erasure. Sorry. Sidetracked myself here. The Dextral Erasure and Perfect Chaos. You can see that we got that 15, the T1 all res there. But in this case here, it replaced. What is that?
Ruin
the all attributes.
surrounds you.
The all attributes, by the way, I forgot to point this out as well. You'll notice that it is technically tier 2. However, because this is a Fractured Lake amulet, the highest item level that Fractured Lakes can be done on, because of the way that the Atlas works now, is item level 81. And the tier 1 to all attributes is item level 82 modifier. So it's literally not possible to have like a Gloam amulet or a Tenebrous amulet or a Penumbra or Dusk amulet that has that modifier, because it's not possible to get an item level 82. So it's not like settling in that respect. And also the difference between tier 1 and tier 2 to all attributes is 22 versus 24. It would be a bit more meaningful if it was 22 versus 25, because the 25 would catalyze an additional point as well, right? So 25 would catalyze to 30 tall attributes, whereas 22 gets 26, right? So 4 tall attributes is not nothing. It's obviously not game breaking, but it's not nothing, right? However, the difference between 22 and 24 is like when it's catalyzed is 26 versus 28 tall attributes, and again, aside from the fact that it's impossible, the 2 to all attributes is not making or breaking anything. That being said, though, the 22 to all attributes, or the 26 catalyzed, in my opinion, is actually one of the best mods that you can get in an amulet, because every build, to some extent, needs attributes, whether that's just skill requirements or skill gem requirements, rather,
Be not ashamed
or
at
if
your
you're doing any kind of
meager
scaling
record.
through various methods on the tree. Being able to get a total of 78 to total attributes is just incredibly efficient. When you compare that to the fact that a T1 single attribute is only 33, right? Being able to get 26 to all 3 of them with the same amount of affixes is just crazy value. Like when you look on a ring, for example, rings only get 13 to all attributes for the same amount of comparable individual like strength, dex, or int. And so this is obviously incredibly efficient and basically universally needed across every build, with various small niche exceptions. So that's one that I typically always put onto an amulet. If I weren't using a Tenebris, I would be using a Gloam, or is it Gloam or Dusk? Gloam amulet, I think, is the one with the 4 suffixes, 2 prefixes. And those 4 suffixes in that case would be, if I were doing that one, I would do crit bonus, +3, all attributes, ES %, and spirit. Because the build that I'm doing revolves around strength stacking to various capacities. I know I have a different chest on right now, but normally I'm also using the Iron Grasp here. But because we use Heroic Tragedy with Black Scythe training, that strength percentage is ES percentage, as well as a significant amount of damage. So that's why the preference was shown on my end for this one. But again, if you're not doing that specific niche build as I am, you may have a preference towards the Gloam amulet in that case. All right. Anyway, sorry, I know I'm yapping quite a bit here. We'll just pump through these now. So this is lock number 3. Rarity. Lightning res. Dex. T1 dex. Strength. Mana regen. Rarity. Lightning res. T1 int. Lock number 4.
One loss is nothing to be ashamed of.
That's a sight for Sara. Look at that, boys. That's a +2. Oof.
Best run.
So it's times 0.8, right? So that could be 3 times 0.8 is 2.4. So times 0.84. Hit 3 would be 49. So that's also, this is actually the same.
Is inescapable.
Same likelihood for this to happen, because it would be 0.3, 0.2, 0.1, and 80. So yeah, also 410. So that's the exact same likelihood as getting a +4. I'm actually pretty happy that this is not
Stray
the
too
+4 roll
far
that we
and
eventually
find
get, because
pain.
this went down everywhere basically. That is, I think, actually the literal minimum roll. Times 0.8.
8 begets
28.
hate.
No, sorry, 28 crit bonus is the lowest possible. The all attributes is like at a low end. The spirit's at the lowest of its natural end. So yeah, that's not great, but still somewhat noteworthy in the sense that it's the first time that
The storm comes swiftly.
Gem level change. Dexterity. All res. Oh!
Relentless assault.
Fuck, why did this happen during a recording? What are the fucking odds of that? See, you know what the thing is, too? It's like the strength percentage, first of all, was rather difficult to get on there.
Time is
since
your
you have
enemy.
to use a perfect essence, replace it with a prefix. It's only a 1 in 3 to hit the strength. then you have to like whittle away, and the whittle has to re-roll the suffix into the prefix, and then you've got to replace that and red temp, blah blah. It costs a lot of money.
And lightning abound.
But I know I just carved out a caveat for saying that this was like the one thing that I would even consider replacing it with, and this is like, broadly speaking, this is a better amulet from like if you were looking to sell to the masses, right? If you're playing a projectile skill, there's like nothing on here but every crit based build in the game is going to need attributes. They're going to need all res. They're going to need spirit. Obviously, the gem levels are great.
You shall suffer your own bile.
Sensible. But you also have to keep in mind, we do have the Frenzied Bear on there. However, this is not sanctifying it, so I could change the Frenzied Bear. But I've spent so much money getting the Strength percent. It's not like Strength percent's a bad mod. And All Res has so many other places that you can get it. I'm not just trying to milk this here, because I actually did want to make this a significantly shorter video, but I'm recording this live on Twitch. I'm curious, straw poll, what do you guys think? Do you guys think I should go all res or keep strength percent? Am I over-explaining this for a particular group of people? It's kind of a loaded question. Strength percentage for sure. All right. There's some confirmation bias. I'm over-explaining this, as you so kindly phrased it, because I'm recording this to post potentially as a YouTube video. And it's a lot more practical for me to explain all of the pertinent information for people that might be coming to watch that with no knowledge base than it is for me to reply to 45 individual comments asking what's going on and having to type the entirety of that out. That being said, I do recognize the fact that if you're coming at it from a place of, even being somewhat like competent and up to date with the game, as it is currently, that a lot of what I just said will be obvious to you. But keep in mind, from like a content perspective, the people who are typically watching
random
videos that
must
are
dictate
entitled
you win occasionally.
Guide to X with demo or whatever are usually not, like, people aren't actively, like, your customer acquisition, people that are watching that for the first time, if they're looking up a guide, it's because they don't know what they're doing.
All the colors of death.
If you already knew what you're doing, you're probably not watching it in the first place. And if you are, maybe I could just put a timestamp just to say this is when the re-rolls actually happen.
That which you
without the
release.
explanation. But that's a pretty easy fix as compared to the downside of not explaining anything. I do know that I'm super wordy. Alright, see ya res roll. Bye bye. Kinda cool we got that.
Death's cold grip is inescapable.
I guess now, is there any other mod suffix wise that I would even bother looking? All res +3.
An arrow falls, and I know where.
I give you to my ancestors.
I'm sorry, I didn't plan this out ahead of time here. I'm thinking now, since we've obviously through that action decided that we're not going to take all res. I don't think that we have to waste the time doing the chaos shuffle. Actually, that's not true, because it could change the crit bonus technically into an organic crit bonus roll. The T1 crit bonus could roll into a non-desecrated T1 crit bonus, and then I could sanctify the prefix and adjust it as needed, theoretically.
Lightning gives little warning.
Bolton, where are you going with this? say my name. You're goddamn right. Actually, I guess no, there's not a purpose to checking the Whittling Dextral. The Dextral, as I said, we could get the organic crit bonus to roll. Since there's only one prefix, you can infinitely roll the prefix without having to use any expensive currencies, right? Because you can just swap global defenses and then do Sinestral Necromancy with a preserved collarbone and just repeat that over and over instead of having to use Omen of Light or the expensive one. So being able to
hate begets hate.
Have the organic mod is preferable in that scenario.
A second victory.
Damn. Look at that, 31 to all attributes, that's a max roll. 59 to spirit, that's almost max roll. One off max roll. That's a bummer. Leech.
I cannot do this yet.
Why do you aid this bound criminal?
Oh, it's another bad one. That crit bonus is juiced as hell, though. Oh, 15 strength. Alright, we'll speed this along because I'm sure most of you are getting a little impatient. Especially those watching on YouTube. 7% strength with the nightmare.
They are coming.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Above max, above max, above max, +4. We got the above max strength, the above max crit bonus, the above max attributes. Only the spirit went down, and it only went down by 1 spirit. Let's go ahead and just left click. That is pretty. Oh my god, that's so annoying. We're missing 1 to attributes. Now I'm missing 1 int for my scepter. Alright, 1 sec. Int. 2.2 million tooltip. Crit cap. 711 crit bonus. Lovely. Or with this guy here with nearly 12,000 ES. That's just under $1 million. Actually, if I have this guy on, I don't need that ring. Anyways, this is not pertinent to the YouTube video. That's about as good as it gets. Yeah, I mean, yeah, getting obviously the maximum roll that we could have got on this would have been 60 spirit, plus 4, 31 attributes, 14 strength, and 47 crit bonus. So this is 5 crit bonus, 1% strength, 6 to attributes, and 11 spirit off perfect. But as you saw through the various rolls throughout, we could have also got, you know, like 39 spirit, 17 attributes, 7 strength, 29 crit bonus with that plus 4. So the fact that we went above max on everything except spirit, with spirit only dropping 1, that is like chef's kiss. Super happy with that. Thanks for watching, guys, on YouTube. 36 minutes. Guess that's not the longest video ever, but I'm sure probably longer than some of you. That it highly favors things that have either. Hi YouTube, it's Belton here. What if I told you that there was a new skill, a new craft, a new base, a new tech, some new form of scaling, and potentially some new build variants that are heretofore undiscovered, unutilized, underrepresented, don't have a market, and have basically no footprint online whatsoever for PoE2. Would it sound too good to be true? Maybe, but it's the case. Today's video, I'm going to showcase that, break it down for you guys, give you all the math, the numbers, etc. There's a little quick backstory, I guess. Over the past couple days, I've been trying out a new build, leveled a new character. I joined the Cult of Spark, which I've much maligned in the past. But just a general interest in the skill itself to see the different ways in which it could scale potentially as a trigger or in its own right. Doing the typical min-maxing that I do with my builds in, you know, gear, passives, kind of planning things out, looking through a variety of things. I came across something as an idea, sort of a loose concept that I then kind of finely tuned. Was intrigued by, and then spent a autistic level of hours consulting various different AIs of different platforms to, you know, data mined PoEDB and the wiki and you know, the game files and the game descriptions and Reddit and all that stuff, just to see what kind of information was out there. And much to my surprise, it really didn't exist. So don't consider this a final you know, statement or testament or gospel or anything like that. I really just want to share what I've learned so far and really get the ball rolling here, and hopefully you know, provide some insight or a possible vector for some of you guys to get excited and you know, potentially upgrade your builds a little bit and try out some new tech that really has a very high ceiling and some really, really cool mechanics tied to it. So with that being said, let's jump into it, boys. Now, I did put up a poll on my YouTube here asking you guys what it was that you thought I was going to showcase. So we take a look here. We had over 55 people write guesses here. And this is one of the excerpts from one of the, I think this is from Gemini, running the numbers on what I'm about to show you guys here. And if we take a look, we can see that it actually increases our total output by approximately 52.7x. And a little description of what's going on there. So if you want to check that little post out, feel free. But I also put a little straw poll here, just asking people to vote on whether or not they wanted a video kind of discussing this. And you can see that 96% of respondents said yes. So that's what we're going to do today. Now, enough with the tickling your fancy and being coy, here we are, boys. What we're going to be talking about is the Wrath Scepter. None of you got this correct. Nobody guessed this. And so hopefully this is kind of interesting to you guys because there's a lot to discuss here. As I said right at the beginning, this encapsulates basically a new skill, a new craft, a new base, some new tech, some new form of scaling, and a build variant that, again, heretofore has not existed. So why the Wrath Scepter? Well, we are really honing in on Fulmination here. Fulmination as a skill. This is the only source, the implicit, on the scepter itself. And you can see here the flavor text for Fulmination is while active. The first time any skill hits a shocked enemy in your presence, that skill also hits other shocked enemies in your presence up to a maximum. Cannot inflict shock, hits enemies up to 8 times. Additional hits deal 64% less damage. And additional hits convert 100% of physical and elemental damage to lightning. If we hold Alt here, we can see that with quality, the additional hits will deal more damage. Now, unlike other things where more and less work multiplicatively, so for example, if you have Pinpoint Critical where it's 30% less crit bonus, and Overextend, which is 30% more crit bonus on the supporting the same skill, let's say you had 100 crit bonus, it would go, the Pinpoint Critical would be a times 0.7, and then the Overextend would be a times 1.3. And so in that case there, you would end up with the 100 going to 70, and then the 70 going to 91. So even though the 30 would seemingly equal each other out, you actually end up with less. As a result, that's not the case with the more damage as you see here. It is additive with the total. So you can see there the quality on ours giving 7% more. That just gets subtracted from the less damage there. And that's really important. And I'll get to how this scales in a little bit. But just loosely as a mechanic, how this works, because it could be potentially a little bit convoluted. I know it certainly probably is the case that it is convoluted. And so what you're probably imagining when you see the flavor text, if this is you as a person, right? So you attack, right? These lightning bolts representing enemies. The way that it's worded might make it seem like if you hit enemy number 1 here, right? It would then, if we look at it again, it hits up to 8 enemies. A curious choice. Chaos, in your presence as long as they're shocked. And so you might think that it kind of works like a chain where you hit the enemy and then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 with the green circle there representing your presence radius and the fact the lightning bolts representing that the enemy is shocked. But that's actually not how it works. How it does actually work is as follows. Sorry, we're going to have to just Control-C our way through this.
Steel and
almost there. All right, there we go. How it does work is like so. If I hit an enemy like this, right, and then our radius is represented by, again, our presence radius is represented by this green circle. Okay, this would count as 1 hit, right? This initial hit right here. So this is your primary hit target, right? It will then count up to 8 enemies that are within your presence that are also shocked, and it will simultaneously hit them. So if we strike this guy with any kind of hit,
comes
right,
swiftly.
It will then go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So in this case right here, it would then hit 6 additional targets, and then it would do a base damage multiplier pertinent to the gem level or the skill level of Fulmination. With again, every level that you get that it goes up, where it says 71% less damage, that'll go to 70 at level 21, 69 at 22, etc. And then obviously with the quality, every 20 quality is 5% as well, so 0.25% damage or more damage per quality, which if you look at it in the inverse, which is relevant for the scaling later, 71% less means that, it's actually 64% less if we look at it like this, because that's inclusive of the quality. So that would mean that it's 36%, right? So we do our main hit, and then 36% of the damage for that will then hit up to 8 enemies at the same time, so long as they are within presence and that they are shocked. And so again, just mechanically, this is how it works here. Now, what's important to note is that it does literally nothing for single target. Now, that is still pertinent because I am of the opinion, I think rather solidly so, that benchmarking, at least right now in PoE, is not so much done, fighting pinnacle bosses or really single target environments. It's doing like 6-man temple carries, like Uber Juice 77 room runs, or Abyss 47 pit difficulty per pit, overrun T18 10 mod rare, blah blah blah, like that kind of stuff, right? It tends to be like hyper packed, hyper high density, just really strong rares, etc., etc. And so if you are doing just pinnacle boss fights over and over, this is not the tech for you, and this has really no pertinence for that. It does, however, have pertinence for basically every other situation, and it does also have some crossover and some secondary and tertiary utility and some cool mechanical interactions that we'll get to. Just as a heads up for this video, I know it probably seems like I'm going off the cuff, but I actually did prepare over like a dozen hours, like a 3,000 word talking point thing, as well as cross-reference multiple conversations across various different AIs. Those conversations I'll have saved to really nail down how it is that the mechanic itself scales, and I'll get to that in a bit, and some various other questions. So I won't necessarily go through all that nitty-gritty, but I will make this documentation available at the end for anyone that wants to read through it, and I'll do my best to be concise about it here. So in any case, that is how it mechanically works, Fulmination as the skill itself. So when you hit an enemy, right, if there are enemies that are nearby, and nearby being contingent on your presence, and those enemies are shocked, right, when you hit, it will hit up to 8 enemies simultaneously, doing a base multiple of your damage. Now, why this is so crazy is really for a few reasons. The first one is that there is no internal cooldown on this, all right? So, and the only thing that is the trigger condition for it, right, is the first time any skill hits a shocked enemy. Now, that does not apply a debuff to the enemy. It is not enemy-centric. It is player-centric. So, skill use is all that is required for that, right? So, a single skill can't hit unless otherwise stated, like the Spark, for example, where it says it can hit the same projectile can hit once every 0.68 seconds. But something like a like Whirling Slash, for example, or what do you call it? That little frost. You shoot the frost thing and it spins around and hits more. Anyways, basically you can't shotgun with most skills, and so Fulmination is just per skill use, which means that it highly favors things that have either a very high attack or cast speed. But what's cool about it is that it's just hits, right, that are the trigger for it. So it can be used by attacks, either melee or projectile, by casters. It doesn't really have any requirements there. It doesn't have to be crits. It doesn't have to be a certain damage type. It just has to be a hit. And again, there's no internal cooldown. And moreover, it doesn't cost any mana. So if you have a skill, for example, that doesn't have the best AoE, or you're having trouble with pack clear, or you just have a skill, that you really want to spruce up your capacity to chunk through maps, this is going to be something that you should definitely stay tuned for going through here, because, again, when I go through all this, it gets pretty nuts. But, so let's see, where do I go from here? I guess we could talk about what is it that we actually want to get on this. for those of you that are interested in that. And so what you need for this is a Wrath Scepter. You want to get item level 82. You need a level 20 Fulmination Implicit. You want an extra exceptional socket, and if you can, you want to raise the quality to 30%. The reason for item level 82 is that it is required for T1 spirit percentage. The reason you need a Wrath Scepter is because that is the only source for Fulmination, which is implicit. Level 20 on the Fulmination itself for that implicit will give you 5 support gems, and obviously, as I mentioned earlier, it'll also give the best base damage percentage. The extra socket allows for either more spirit or presence AoE, and quality gives more base damage percentage scaling to Fulmination itself. So that as a baseline is kind of what you want to get. Now, for the actual craft itself, prefixes and suffixes, there are basically, I would say, 4 mods that are mandatory on this, and the other 2 you can kind of choose as you wish. But the mandatory affixes for the prefixes, I would say, are spirit and spirit hybrid. So that would be spirit percentage and spirit and mana. So that would give you a total of 65 spirit on the spirit percent and 38 on the hybrid. So that would give 103% spirit, which is local to the scepter itself. So that would give you 203 spirit on it by itself. And then for the suffixes, there's 2 that we're going to want, which are presence area of effect, which you can see right here. So that's 80%. And then the other one would be 20% aura effect. And aura effect comes from an essence. So that's basically free to get. Now, after that, so that's 2 prefixes and 2 suffixes. For your optional prefixes, you can either, for the other one, you can get mana, or if you don't use mana, you can get nearby enemies deal percentage increased damage. For the suffixes, you have a few options. You can get +4 to minion skills, just strength, int, mana regen. Really up to you. I would really just say those 4 are the key ones there. And then in terms of corruptions or sanctification, ideally you would corrupt for an extra socket and then twice corrupt for 25% spirit. Doing so would give you upwards of 258 spirit on the scepter itself. So you'd have 103% from the 2 prefixes, 30% from the 3 sockets, and 25% from the corruption. Sanctification is also possible, of course, especially if you had +4 to minions, because that could be sanctified to +5, and you had some way, you're doing a minion skill or whatever. But otherwise, corruption is probably where you're going to go with that. Now, you probably heard that I mentioned aura effect, and maybe you're a bit confused and you've never heard of that. I think I said aura effect. It's technically aura magnitude is what it's called. And aura magnitude, I think, is one of the often overlooked things in PoE 2, outside of playing support builds or perhaps some minion builds. And I think that like banner bots probably have some factoring in there, but really at large, it's kind of evasive, and it's one of the reasons why I think this has flown under the radar for so long. And actually, towards the end of the document I have here, I actually put 7 reasons why I thought that, with evidentiary supports, why this has just been something that really has been so largely and grossly overlooked. But we'll get to that with time. Aura magnitude, though, is something that I will explain shortly, and how that interacts with this, because it really takes it to another level, as well as the various sources that you can get from that. Now, I guess the first thing that would be pertinent, and maybe I'll put these numbers up on the screen so you follow along here, to cover after, we just went over what you could get onto the scepter itself as like a base damage thing. So I actually was fiddling with this last league too when I was playing Whirling Slash. I just got a little sidetracked with it, but you can see here, there's that spirit mod, the increased damage mod, the 38 spirit there, the aura magnitude, and the presence. That's a tier 3 presence roll. But you can see we got like 223 spirit on this, the 20 fulmination, yada yada. So that's more or less what you want with the craft. It's not a particularly difficult one, and there's not that many options on scepter modifiers. So the crafting part of it is actually probably the least pertinent thing to share here. More so, I think the tech behind it and the different scaling and the different ways it interacts that we'll be getting into now.
Rare
I think is really
is the breath of living
bulk
air.
of the juice lies in this video here. So, for Wrath, Scepter, Fulmination, Aura scaling, every level equals 1% more damage. And again, when I say more damage on this, I mean effectively it's 1% less damage, right? So because this doesn't have any mana cost, there's no internal cooldown, and the only trigger condition is that like when you hit, it'll hit other enemies. Right now, of course, they have to be within your presence and shocked, but you know, having enemies shocked is basically a universal, ubiquitous thing. If you're playing something like Spark, for example, everything that you hit's going to be shocked. You can have like shock round, various ways to figure out shocked. And then presence is very easy to scale, which again I'll show you shortly. So really what we're looking at here as a trigger condition is just that, again, it doesn't work on single target, because if you're fighting one enemy, right, if you look at the wording, it says while active, the first time any skill hits a shocked enemy in your presence, that skill also hits other shocked enemies, right? And so if it's just the one enemy, there aren't any other shocked enemies. But as long as there's at least one other enemy, you're going to be getting, again, a additional hit for free, instantly done, with no mana cost and no internal cooldown, with the only condition being that it hits, right? And if you have multiple sources of hits simultaneously, that's cool, because it'll work with all of them. And so, as a downside for this, it obviously makes those additional hits do less damage, at least at face value, right? As you can see here, even with the level 20 and 30 quality, it still has 71% less, which would mean it's doing 29% of the base. However, in terms of scaling it, every level that you get Wrath leveled, so every additional level, that's 1% more. And every 4 points of quality, that's another 1% more. So if we put this on, for example, we can see our Fulmination now has 58% less, right? And then if we take Dialis here, it's at 55. Take Uhtred's Omen, and if we take +1 lightning, we can now see it's at 55. Right? Which means we got that all the way up to... Was that not working? Was it not working? Oh, sorry, there we go. I don't know, the tooltip's messed up maybe. Alright, so it's 54. $53. Oh, that's one other support, that's why. Whoop. There we go. Sorry about that. So, right here, what we've done is added 2 levels, 3 levels, 4 levels, and 10 quality. We also have +1 level here and +4 levels here. So, that's +5 levels, +8 levels, +9 levels, +10 levels, and 10 quality. And then our chest also has 4 qualities of 14. So, this is now a level...
I cannot do this yet.
30 Fulmination with 44 quality. Again, I'm not sure why the thing is only saying level 25 there, but either way, it's represented correctly here. And now you can see it says less damage dealt with additional hits is 50%, which means that it'll be doing 50% of our base damage. So again, even though it's a bit of a slow climb, again, we started out with it being 71%, meaning we were doing 29% of our base damage with our additional hits. But now we're up to 50%, right? So we've almost doubled it. Now, keep in mind, what's really cool about this too is that it doesn't it's taking the net output of your final number, right? So after all of your other scaling and all of your damage sources, right? So like in my case, let's say an arc projectile hits, right? Let's say that arc projectile, after all the damage it's dealt, right, including like resistance inversion, crits and all that stuff. Let's see, it does 1 million damage, right? The hit is dealing 1 million damage. So the number that this is scaling off of is that final hit, right? It's not scaling off of like the base, like 22 to 99 or whatever, right? It's scaling off the actual hit on the mob, and then once it hits that mob that you're attacking, if the conditions are met. So if there are enemies within presence that are shocked, it will then hit them for a percentage of that damage value. So in that case I just gave there, if we look at our very poorly done paint thing, if we hit this enemy for 1,000,000 damage, right, it would then hit this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one simultaneously for no mana and instantly for 500,000 damage. So instead of just doing 1,000,000 DPS or damage with that one attack, we would do 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4. So we would be quadrupling our total output just from that, right? So even at that very level, that's absolutely crazy, right? Because that means that if there's at least, so if there is the condition being met for it whatsoever, right? And we're not even getting to the crazy scaling on this yet, but just by putting in a couple support gems and having the gem level, you're talking about, as long as there's one additional enemy, your AoE damage output is increasing by 50%, right? So if we did 1,000,000, right, a single target, if there's 2 enemies, by hitting this for 1,000,000, if there's only 1, we're doing 1.5. So that means the worst case scenario is 50% more damage. And again, that's just off the gem level there.
We did it.
Now, and in that scenario we just laid out, the ceiling there would be between 50 and 400% more. But we're just scratching the surface here. So again, that's the first thing you're going to want to kind of factor in when it comes to scaling this, is the fulmination skill itself, the quality, and the gem levels. And so again, I'll just link this document at the end so you can look through it more closely if you're so inclined. But this is just going over the various different ways you could get quality, etc., and the gem levels. And so it also has no internal cooldown, as I said. The range on it is based off of your presence, and it is based on each skill use, not on the enemy. Therefore, faster attacks or casts are favored, assuming the enemy you are hitting is shot. Since the skill states it only hits other enemies in your presence, it does nothing in a single target scenario. With at least 2 mobs in your presence, this is 50% more damage, as it will strike 1 additional enemy. And with 9 enemies in your presence, this is 400% more damage, as it will strike 8 additional enemies. The aura itself is based off the net output from the preceding or proccing skill, but the damage that comes from that can be further magnified by support gems and stuff put into the fulmination aura itself. Now, this is the real exciting part, because this is, when I say the tech that was heretofore unrevealed, this is one of the things I figured out after much tinkering with various AIs and whatnot, and scanning through like every possible resource on the internet. I figured out how aura magnitude works on offensive auras and the math behind it. And boy, is it good. But aura magnitude, I don't think is probably something that is weighing on people's minds very often for most builds. But in case you have given it a ponder, it's relatively obvious, or at least in line with how magnitudes work elsewhere in the game. For skills that are linear or like static, like discipline, or like purity of fire, purity of ice, whatever, right? Like, let's say you have plus 200 discipline, then you get 100% aura magnitude. It's fairly obvious that that's just going to make 200 go to 400, right? Bada boom, bada bing. Instead of getting 200, you get 400. But there are also some auras, aura tag skills that come from implicits that are not so straightforward. For example, malice, right? When applying malice, there's multiple stacks of malice, right? Does aura effect apply a duration to it? Does it make it apply more stacks? Does it make an individual stack stronger, right? There's multiple ways that could potentially like scale that, right? That's not entirely obvious, or if it even would interact with it at all. And I think that sort of opaque nature and the fact that it's literally not explained anywhere doesn't, like, it's not on the PoEDP, it's not on the way, it's literally nowhere. And like just looking at it in the game itself is like a laughably poor explanation for it. Aura magnitude, magnitude of a buffer, a debuffer, the values of the stats it applies to a target. A buff with higher magnitudes is more powerful. Modifiers to the magnitudes or buffs come with whoever applies it are multiplicative to the modifiers. to the effect of the buff or the debuff has on a target. Right, so, that, I mean, it says a lot without saying much at all, really. And so, trying to figure out and, nail down, in an exact sense, what that actually does with Fulmination was kind of difficult, but I did figure it out. And as I said, it's very good. So, with that being said, let's explain how Aura Magnitude works. Aura Effect. The final damage of the extra Fulmination hits is based off of the gem level and quality, giving a final less damage multiplier, and therefore leaving a base damage multiplier. 60% less, for example, would mean 40% base damage per proc, striking up to 8 enemies, which would be 40 to 320% more damage. Aura Magnitude takes the resultant base damage